Okay, so I think we're going to kick off now. Good afternoon, everyone. So thanks for coming to my talk. I'll try and keep you all entertained and at the very least, hopefully awake. Feel free to raise your hand at any time during the presentation. I don't mind sort of keeping it conversational. You don't have to wait and ask all the Q&A at the end. If you have a question and sort of want to, put your hand up while it's in your mind, just stick your hand up and I'll do the best I can to answer it. I'll also try and do a formal Q&A at the end if there's any questions. So my name's Norton. I've been privileged to hold the position of Senior Web Architect at Alfresco for 3 exciting years now. We've seen a lot of change during that time, both in terms of Alfresco, the product, and also Alfresco's web infrastructure. When I started at Alfresco, I think we just pushed version 3.3, and that was the first version of Alfresco that shipped with the final Drupal install. So a couple of weeks ago, we pushed 4.2, so there's been quite a few releases since then. We ran all of our website out of the old Alfresco AVM product, which we still ship, but we're no longer developing. So I'm going to talk a little bit about I'm going to go through a few things today. I'm going to do some sort of place setting about Drupal and Alfresco and when to use them. I think more and more people are using the integration. Dries has sort of stolen my Drupal thunder today, so that was a great presentation and a pretty hard act to follow. I'm going to talk about real-world usage scenarios and sort of give you an example of how we're using Alfresco and Drupal at alfresco.com and how we manage that, how we build that. And then that sort of dovetails really nicely into Alfresco in the cloud and how we're utilizing that as part of our technology stack now. I'm also going to do a timed demo, and the aim of that timed demo is to really show people how quickly you can get going with an integration. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the future, what we're planning for the integration, what we're building in, and if we've got time for it, I'll do another demo with some of that new stuff built in there. And hopefully time for a Q&A at the end. So I'm sort of working on the basis that most people know a little bit about Alfresco and probably know quite a lot about it. So I'm not going to talk too much about Alfresco itself. Can I sort of have a show of hands for people who've used Drupal technically here? There's quite a few people. Good, about half. So if any of this the early stuff seems old hat to people, just bear with me. It sort of gets more technical towards the end. And I sort of see Drupal and Alfresco, what some of the two parts can give you as a library of content. And when you really want to use this is when you've got document-centric web pages. So document-centric web pages, it's sort of a bit of a made-up word, really. But you're going to want to, if you just want web pages, just standard web pages, then Drupal does the job really well. There's, as Dries said this morning, there's hundreds of thousands of sites running Drupal. It's very established. It's very well supported. It's a great product out of the box. But when you start to want to sort of enrich that WCM experience and that, having your website and doing more on the back end with it, and actually having documents embedded as part of the page, then you might want to do a bit. Then you might want to start looking at Alfresco. And of course, you might wonder, why don't we just use Alfresco? And Alfresco is great at doing all of that business logic, workflows, life cycles, and collaboration, and that's what we're all using it for today. But if I've got a marketing website, say, and I have a latest news item, and I want to attach, say, this PowerPoint presentation to it, I can do that. I can't really do that with Alfresco easily. So I can download it from my Alfresco repository and upload it to, say, Drupal. But that's not a particularly nice way of doing it. If I sort of quick share that document in Alfresco and post a link to that on my Drupal page, then I'm taking users away from my website, which is probably a quite well curated marketing funnel. I don't want them to go away from my website. I want to keep them sort of in that experience. I'm trying to probably convert them to do something, make them buy a product or something like that. So I'm going to try and keep them on the site. And I could just sort of download it and keep it in Drupal and just upload it as part of the page. And that's a pretty easy way to do it. And that's how most people are keeping their files in Drupal. Drupal doesn't really have a sort of hardcore sort of workflow or life cycle or anything like that. And so if I upload that file and then what happens to us in the marketing department is that the PR agency will come along and say, oh, actually, there's a typo here or this information's out of date. And then we've got to do that manual process again of downloading that file from our ECM system, copying it to a hard drive locally, and then re-uploading it to Drupal. It's a very human process. It's a process that doesn't automatically update. And as we all know, sort of human processes, people have bad days. They go on pub crawls at conferences and have a bad head in the morning and don't get out of bed and do the work they should do. So it's fraught with sort of problems, and there could be issues there. So sort of see it like Alfresco. I'm trying to use a visual sort of analogies here. Alfresco is sort of like the production, the life cycle, workflow, and the authoring environment. And the best picture I could come up with there is that's actually an Amazon storage depot somewhere in England. So they've got all their content there. It's a massive content house, and they've got all these people running around, moving documents around. They've got to get out by a certain time. They've got to make sure the orders are paid for, and then they dispatch them. But if I want to go and buy a book, I don't want to go in there and fetch my book. It's like I'm not going to know where to find it. It's not very. It's for me as an end user. It's not very structured. That's sort of how I see Alfresco, and that's how we keep our documents at the moment. But I'm an end user, so I want a nice, friendly person to be able to sort of go there and see and say, hey, I need this book. Can you show me where it is? And it's sort of, I'm using again the libraries analogy here. So that's sort of like the friendly help desk or the reference person. And they're able to sort of give me that presentation and navigate me to the right place and provide some context for what I want. So in the case of like my latest news article with my PowerPoint presentation, I can sort of build a page around that, and I can promote that to the top story on my website, so I can drive visitors to it, rather than it just being sort of siloed in a folder and nested down. So it's really easy to push that up, to feature it, to maybe build a call to action around it in Drupal. And that's what, for us, Drupal's really good at, is building that sort of context and that messaging in it. And then all of our sort of business logic, we're using Alfresco on the back end to sort of manage that and collaborate with people. And at Alfresco, for instance, we sort of, on the website, we have maybe a dozen different authors from different points all around the world. So they can be like anywhere from sort of Tokyo to San Mateo and all those places sort of to the left and the right of that. And we're all working on different time zones. But Alfresco allows us to carry on working on that content and workflow it and publish it. When it's ready to be published, Drupal can see that content, and it gives us a really safe mechanism of pushing that content out. It's safe and controlled. So Drupal's not going to suddenly expose your entire sort of file repository to everyone, because we're very careful with the permissions that we have in there. I'll talk a little bit more about how we have that set up in a moment. So what Drupal's giving us is that really safe, controlled delivery mechanism for our really important content. And there's not a lot of point to the content that we write in a marketing department if it's just siloed in a repository and no one can see it. We want to get those white papers out. We want to get the resources out. And these can be, this content could be anything from sort of textbooks, archives, anything you can get in a library. Again, it's a giant library of content that we're getting from Drupal and Alfresco. So that's the concept, just a bit of place setting. And we're going to talk more about it in the real world. And so I'm going to demonstrate like what you can do with contributed modules from Drupal.org. And I think the best realization of this for me at the moment is our Alfresco Summit 2013 site. So has anyone here downloaded the presentations for a session while they've been in the session? Okay. Great, that's good to see a few hands go up. And that's all delivered via CMIS, which is the connector between Drupal and Alfresco. So I'm not going to talk too much about that and get into too sort of technical details on how that works. But that's actually, it's all coming in via CMIS and the Drupal connector. And this is sort of a really basic diagram of how our sort of technology infrastructure is set up for the Summit site. This is a little bit different on our .com site. But at one end, we've got Acquia Drupal. It's the latest version 7. And that's connected to an Alfresco On-premise install. And at the other end is Alfresco in the cloud. And that's either ends of that are accessible to anyone. So anyone can register for an account with Alfresco in the cloud. Anyone can see summit.alfresco.com. What we did for the conference is set up a cloud site for people. So anyone who's a speaker at the conference, and a lot of these people are external to the organization, unlike myself, so I already had a cloud account. But we invited these people into a specific Alfresco cloud site called Speaker Resources. And we invited them there, and we placed some collateral, which was this PowerPoint template. And we asked people to download the template, to work on their slides, and then put them in a named folder. So once they're in that named folder, so people hopefully went away, downloaded the template, worked independently on their slides, or maybe they collaborated on it with a colleague if they're doing a joint presentation. And when they were ready to have those surfaced on the website, they uploaded them back into Alfresco in the cloud in a named folder, which was named on their talk. Now, completely sort of seamlessly in the background, and they wouldn't be able to really see this, is that we had the hybrid cloud sync connector set up. So we set this up, Jeff Potts and myself, Jeff Potts set this up a few weeks ago, so that anything that went into the presentations folder in Alfresco in the cloud was automatically synced with our on-premise install. And our on-premise install is something that Drupal can see directly. So Drupal has a system user account. It's not logging people in individually. It's an account that sits in the background. It's got very limited privileges. It's only got guest access. It can only see content. It can't edit it. It can't delete it. It's literally pulls content down. I saw a presentation from Dimi at our media yesterday, and he uses, I'm going to steal this term, he calls it no-sync. So we're not actually taking files from the on-premise install and putting them in Alfresco. It's really important part of this. We're not saving those files from on-premise to Alfresco. And the reason that we don't do that is we always want to have the latest and greatest version of that document. We don't want to sort of have problems where that sync breaks down, and we don't really want two different versions of the same file stored in different systems. It makes sense with cloud because we want to invite external people into that environment. We trust them in cloud. Then on-premise, it's just used literally to host our site. So we have different sites for our different websites. So our .com's got a different cloud site, and our Summit site's got a cloud site. And that's all connecting via CMIS. So this is what a user will see. This is my presentation in Alfresco in the cloud. Everyone's probably seen this screen. We've got the additional little icon in the left-hand side, and that's the only thing as an end user that I know this is syncing to Alfresco on-premise. And I've just added some metadata there, just the title, the description, and this is how it appears, as you've all seen on the website. So most of this is just a standard Drupal page. We've built some content types in Drupal, and they're all built via a GUI, unlike Alfresco when they're XML. So we can just select what fields we want. We've got like the technical rating, the room, the time. And at the bottom is our presentation. So just highlighting that there. And as you can see, we've got a little thumbnail at the bottom, which is a rendition of what we call in Alfresco a rendition of the document. And renditions are really important, and sort of we've added them in a recent release of the CMIS API support for those, so you can see them on the Drupal side. So previously, you've just got like a little PowerPoint icon, sort of stock default iconography. And again, you can see the sort of mapping between the CMIS objects. So we've got the title field in Alfresco in the cloud, and we've got and then we've got it on the website. So anything I put in one automatically appears in the other. So live lookup, when you click on that file, it is actually fetching it from Alfresco on-premise. Again, it's not copying the content, it's just pulling it through. So we're never saving these documents into Drupal itself. What we do with this is we've added recently with the CMIS Views module is some caching. So I'll talk a little bit more about the modules later on. And that caching just means that every time you load that page up, it makes an expensive CMIS query to go and get the latest meta information. And we cache that in the database in Drupal so that we don't have to do that every time. So that's cached, I think, for an hour or 3 hours. We can manually turn that off, or we can override it just to sort of flush the cache. And that just means that when you're sat in the sessions and you want to sort of browse a page but don't want to download the actual PowerPoint presentation, it should load up like maybe a second faster or something like that. So it adds up. What's really important about this is people, I spoke earlier on about that downloading a file from our ECM system and then uploading it into Drupal, and how that, humans are prone to that failure and, accidentally don't update things or sleep in or are off ill. This process is running in the background all the time. There's no, if I updated the presentation, I think last night, and that should automatically appear on the website. It's that Cloud Sync, as soon as I upload that, Cloud Sync sees that there's a new file in there, sees that the date and time has changed, and that syncs across to Alfresco on-premise. And then next time somebody goes to that page, Drupal will do a CMIS call to the folder. Another important thing, just to skip back one, is that it's not just limited to PowerPoint presentations. So some of the sessions you may have been in, you may have seen things like audio clips, video clips, what are the file types? PDFs, Word documents, anything I put in my folder that I want to share with people at the conference, and conferences like this, people want to be able to share that collateral. It's going to appear on the session page, so it enables us to share more than just presentations. We can put anything in there. It's like a resource hub. So this is always working in the background. I don't have to worry about doing any updates or anything like that. I think there are I think there's something like 140 sessions here, and slightly more presenters, because some presentations have got sort of panels. So if you can imagine the sort of overhead from a business side of things, how we used to do this when someone would work on a document, upload it to a repository, or email it, as it used to happen quite often, and then there would be somebody in the web team would have to upload all of those presentations. You can imagine that crunch at sort of Summit, when all of a sudden everyone suddenly thinks, I really need to finish that presentation, emails it at the last minute, and they all have to be uploaded. We don't have that problem. They just upload them to their cloud account, and it all goes seamlessly in the background. Obviously, we're using Alfresco in the cloud there. You may wonder why we don't just connect Drupal straight to Alfresco in the cloud. And it's technically possible. It uses OAuth to authenticate, and that's different to the authentication we're using for Alfresco On-premise. The real reason that we're not using Alfresco in the cloud directly from Drupal at the moment is that it doesn't have that notion of the system user. So I've created, I think I've called it something like CMIS user and given it a password. It's got very cut off access, so it can only sort of consume guest content. If I connected this to Alfresco in the cloud and authenticated via OAuth, I've authenticated as myself. There's no notion of a system user in Alfresco in the cloud. So I can't sort of hard code some, an anonymous login in with just guest access and get those documents. I can see in the future that using Alfresco in the cloud directly with Drupal may be a possibility. It probably works more for things like intranet environments where you'd use that as your sort of authentication system. But at the moment, it doesn't really serve our sort of use case here. So we're using Alfresco in the cloud for external people to be able to sort of feed content into our systems and our website, and then we sync that down. So that basic setup, we've used other modules in Drupal, but sort of really want to emphasize sort of there's just two modules that we're using there to sort of achieve that on the Drupal end. And one's the CMIS API, and it's just been updated to support Alfresco 4.2, and one's CMIS Views. And CMIS Views was sort of born I started Alfresco about 3 years ago, and 6 months into that, I was a contractor at the time. My boss said, we'd like to do a Drupal site for a new product that we were running, and integrate it with Alfresco. And I knew the CMIS API was out there, but it didn't quite sort of do everything we wanted to do. So I was a little bit scared at the time to sort of build an integration, but that's how it's been born, and it's sort of lived ever since. It's grown, and it's had more features built into it. And since then, I've started sort of updating the CMIS API. So what I want to do now is sort of to iterate, like, what we try to do when we're building these tools out is try to make them really easy for people to sort of get up and running with a basic sort of Drupal integration. And so I'm going to demonstrate how we can do something similar to that Summit integration, just using off-the-shelf modules. And people who've used them before, I'm going to sort of go into a little bit more detail about some of the things that are coming in the future. So I'm just going to demo this and talk through it. It's a recorded demo because I've had problems in Barcelona with the Wi-Fi. I keep getting static shocks, so if you see me jump up, it's because I keep getting static shocks from the carpet. So just bear with me. Okay, so what I'm going to do, just skip back to my previous slide, is in under 10 minutes, I'm going to download and install the Drupal CMIS modules. I'm going to upload this PowerPoint presentation into Alfresco, and I'm going to create a Drupal page, and I'm going to attach this PowerPoint presentation to it, which will be sat in Alfresco. And finally, I'm going to update that PowerPoint presentation. The only thing that, the things I should sort of disclose, so I've already got Alfresco installed, running locally. It's 4.2, it's the latest enterprise version. I've got Acquia Drupal 7, that's the latest point release. So both of them are already set up. It would have been a pretty boring demo to wait for the Wi-Fi downloads of Alfresco, so I kicked that off already. So they're all set up and running. So these modules are available free on Drupal.org. So I'm just going to download them. So at the moment, this is just a base install that I've got on my laptop of Acquia Drupal. And it's as well with Alfresco. It's a completely stock install. There's nothing I've done to it to sort of tweak it or change things. And the CMIS API lives here. I'm just going to download the modules via Git. One thing to sort of call out is on the hackathon on day 0 of the conference, Rich McKnight wrote the original PHP CMIS lib, and we've just sort of separated that out from this library, so there will be a 2.0 release of this coming in the coming month or so, and that will actually use Drupal's libraries functionality, and it will be an external library, and that's going to make it easier to build changes into the API and move this whole thing into Drupal 8. So that's coming soon. I just wanted to mention that. So I'm just installing the modules. It's not particularly interesting just yet. I'm going to then download the CMIS Fuse modules again via Git. And again, these are the same versions that are available today, completely freely available. Because we're using them on our websites, they get pretty, if there's a problem with them working like with 4.2 as there was a week or two ago, the fixes get rolled in pretty quickly. We always try and run the latest version of everything on our website just so that it's a little bit of testing for this setup before they hit the, customers start to see problems. So I'm just going to download this via Git. Yeah.
Is this the CMIS 1 or 1.1?
It's a good question. It's CMIS. Oh, sorry, yeah. Sorry, could you just repeat the question for the microphone?
I'm sorry, yes. I was just curious while you're downloading, are these modules written to the CMIS 1.0 or 1.1 standard?
It's a good question. They're currently for the 1.0 standard. I would really like to move this to, 1.1 solves a lot of things for us. I'd really like to move it to using the JSON bindings eventually. It's quite a big undertaking to do that. So I think the roadmap for this really is that to start with, get the CMIS 1.0 library taken out of the Drupal module and have it as an external library. We've done that, and now we've got some fixes that have, the code essentially forked at one point, and it's got some fixes that went into the Drupal.org version but aren't into the Apache chemistry version. So we've now got to roll them into the PHP library. Once that's done, I think it's then time to sort of look at using 1.1. And I think that work to sort of roll those patches in will probably be done sort of between now and the end of the year, and then start looking at 1.1.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. So I'm going to enable CMIS Fuse. CMIS Fuse has a dependency on the API, so it automatically tells me it's going to enable the other modules. So I don't have to go through them all. This is just how Drupal works. It just enables. I can just enable one module, and it just automatically does all the others for me because it knows that there's the dependency there. So I've already downloaded and installed the CMIS modules. It's really painless. Did it all via Git. They've gone into the modules folder. I use Drush as a command line tool for Drupal. You can also just download those modules and zip forms and explode the zip and put them in the modules directory. I'm going to edit my settings file in Drupal. And this is I'm just going to enter my sort of system account details. I've already put the configuration array in there with the endpoint. You can use the new Alfresco public API endpoints in 4.2. They will work. That's a really old endpoint in there. I should have removed that. So I've got my CMIS user. I'm just going to put my password in. So what you don't want to do here is put something like admin in or something like that. It's important that you have that closed lockdown user for only consuming guest content. So I'm going to save that. And now I'm going to log into Alfresco. So this is, as I said before, this is a completely sort of vanilla install. I haven't added any amps or any additional configurations. CMIS just runs out of the box with Alfresco from, I think it's 3.3 upwards, has the final 1.0 version in it. So this is 4.2, the latest version. And I've created a site here just using Share for my marketing documents. So I'm just going to navigate to that. And I've created two draft and publish folders. The reason that I've done this is just sort of simulate how you would run a workflow. So how we use it on our .com site is people, like if it's legal documents, they'll work on the draft folder, which Drupal can't see. And once they're ready, they'll approve them, and there'll be an automatic workflow that will move that file into the published folder where it can be seen by Drupal, which has permission to see the published folder, but not the draft folder. I'm just going to move that here just to simulate that, just to keep it presentation quick and try and do this in under 10 minutes. Just check that's there. And you see it's generated that little rendition for me. And just check it's loading up okay. My laptop's not the quickest of machines. And yeah, that's all loading up okay, so I'm ready to move on to the next step now. So I've uploaded the PowerPoint to Alfresco. That's step 2 of 4 done. It's pretty quick. So I've got the modules enabled. And the next thing is just to change some of the configuration in Drupal. So I just want to add a field to my content type in Drupal so that I can actually see the Alfresco folder. And when I enabled the CMIS Views module, what that's done is given me an extra field type using the Drupal's field API. So if I go to structure in Drupal, I'm going to just edit my basic page content type. And these are just out-of-the-box content types that Drupal ships with. So I click on Manage Fields. I just want to call them Alfresco Downloads, something simple. And when I click on Field Type, you see CMIS Views has added that CMIS folder. So what I'm going to do is map my CMIS folder directly into the page as a field. I'm going to save that, and it's going to change. Oh, when it saves, it's updating the content type. So I now should have an extra field when I go to edit a basic page content type. Okay, I've got I can set other things off here, make this a required field, add some help text for people, so when people are populating it, they know where to click and things, but I don't want to do any of that now, just keep it simple. So I'm going to close that, and now I just want to add content and add this I want to add that folder into my page so that anything in that folder is seen when the page loads up. I'm going to go and add some content and use the basic page content type, which I've just added that field to. And I haven't installed any modules, so I've got no WYSIWYG, I've got no niceties. This is really bare bones. I'm just going to write some basic text for the title. Just put a little bit of body text in. And what I can do here is really set some context around the downloads that are attached to the page, so I can sort of describe them, introduce them. Like on the summit pages where you've got them at the bottom, I can sort of talk about the sessions. And Drupal allows me to move that around. We've got this extra field here, and it allows us to browse into our Alfresco repository. I can actually set that. There's an admin setting, so I can set it so it drops you right in at the document library level of your site. So you don't have to go through right from the root of Alfresco every single time. So it's saving that directory structure, makes a call to CMIS in the background, and goes and gets the unique node identifier and saves that to the database as part of the page. And voila, the presentation that's in Alfresco is now there, and it's attached. So anyone browsing that page can see it. Now, I went through that really quickly, actually, so I'll just go back quickly. You may have noticed, static attack again. You may have noticed there that there's the only thing is I've got presentation title, so Office automatically puts some title metadata in. I don't want them to say presentation title, so I'm going to update that, be a good information worker, and go and give that some sort of descriptive title. Let's just go back into Alfresco. And you see the problem there. It's automatically pulled that out of the PowerPoint presentation. I'm just going to put the actual title in. I can add a description. And when I save this, what will happen is it will automatically update the record in Alfresco, and I should be able to preview that in Drupal by refreshing the page. Okay. It's still saving. Still saving. So if I go back now, we've got that new version of the document in Alfresco, just loading it up. You can see we've got the little thumbnail down, that's a rendition that's pulled across. Talk more about those in a moment. I think they're going to be really important for this integration moving forward. And I've refreshed that, and nothing's happened, and that's because my cache is active. So it's caching that response that was originally there of the folder structure. So when it sees the title, it's now cached in Drupal's memory. So the page loads up faster, but I'm not getting that new information. If I clear the cache really quickly in Drupal, and then refresh the page, we should see that new meta information come down immediately. If I just click that, and it prompts me to save it. So it's very quick, very simple integration using completely off-the-shelf sort of modules and components. And I can, as I said before, I can do more than just put a PowerPoint presentation in there. I can put photos in there. I can put PDFs, Word files, anything that I think people might want as part of the session in there. So in under 10 minutes, I have downloaded and installed the Drupal CMIS modules. I've uploaded the PowerPoint to Alfresco, and then I've created a Drupal. I've set the settings up as well. Created a Drupal page, and I've attached that PowerPoint to the page, that folder view, so anything in that folder will now be visible on the page. So if I upload anything else to that, it'll just automatically appear. And then finally, I've updated that PowerPoint presentation in Alfresco to sort of edit that metadata. And that demonstration's all just been built with 3 basic modules available on Drupal.org, and that's the CMIS API and CMIS views. So, I think the message that everyone says is that it's really easy to just go and download those and get started with that sort of integration. I think there's 4 different partners doing different things with Drupal and Alfresco integration, so it's well worth checking out their stands. Canopy sort of have a different, Appnovation from Canopy has a sort of different take on this, and they actually use Alfresco to work on the HTML, and then you can workflow that in Alfresco. So I think there's quite a lot of different business cases covered by the various integrations that are available from partners. So I think we've got a little bit of time to talk about sort of moving ahead. And I really wanted to sort of talk about some of the new stuff that I'm working on, and what we're sort of building in here. And it's important that if you think there's something massively missing from the CMIS API module, then approach me, talk to me. I'll be outside after this session, and I'll be on the sponsored pub crawl later. But come and have a conversation or open a ticket on Drupal.org. I really enjoy hearing about how people are using these integrations and using the tools. And this is just sort of what we're working on at the moment to try and make things sort of move things onto the next level. So again, this is just this is like my Playpen site. So if I'm working on something, it looks a little bit different from the other install. Again, it's just a base install of Drupal. I've got the CMIS API running, and I've added some more modules, namely WYSIWYG and Media. So WYSIWYG and Media are both pretty standard modules in the Drupal world. They're pretty common. You just see there, it's just loading a WYSIWYG up for me. I'm not using CMIS views here. I've written some extra modules. Oh, sorry. I've written some extra modules that do this extra integration. Is that playing? Yeah. Sorry. Let me just start that one off again. So I've written some extra modules that do this integration. So one of them is a search module. I'll demonstrate that in the background. Another one's the actual, it's a media plugin for Drupal. So it sits on top of the media module and adds an extra tab into there. And finally, there's one that's like a viewer module. So how Alfresco Share has those flash previews. It basically sort of simulates that. So I'm going to demonstrate that now just by creating a basic demo page. So this is just like a basic demo page of my session slides. Really, the aim of this type of integration is to make it as easy to add a document to your web page as it is to add, say, an image. So this is the principles this is based on. So if I just click there, this is using the media module from WYSIWYG in Drupal. And it loads up my tabs. And I've added one there, that's the Alfresco tab. And using the CMIS search module, I can just search for the Drupal presentation that I've written. If I click apply, there's my results. And you can see it's returned that. So it's searched the repository, and it's found my presentation. So I'm going to submit that. And this is just the same process as if you're uploading an image to Drupal. I'm going to click Save. I've got some options. I'm not doing anything with them at the moment. And it just puts a placeholder image in my WYSIWYG for now. I'm going to click Save. And what we should see here is a sort of representation of the page, a preview of that document on the page. And I said earlier about that no sync principle, so we're not taking files and putting them into Drupal. And this still does that same thing. You can see I can flick through the pages. I can preview it. This is the same presentation I've done today. It's exactly the same one I uploaded earlier. I can zoom in, zoom out, just like we do in Alfresco Share. And this file actually, rather than, it's still in the Alfresco repository. We haven't copied the actual file over, but Alfresco uses renditions, and it automatically creates a Flash version of that PowerPoint presentation. So what we've done here is taken that Flash version of the PowerPoint presentation, and we've actually copied that into Drupal's local file system. It has a reference to the original file, so when that file is updated, it will see, when we run the sort of cron, it see if there's a timestamp difference, it will go and clear the cache, and it will go and fetch the new version of the rendition down. At no point, though, do we actually take the PowerPoint and put it into Drupal. It's still always held in our system of record, which is Alfresco. I'm sort of excited about this because it gives us it's going to give us much more power. It's much easier to use integration, and this is actually sort of putting it into Drupal's managed files database scheme. So it's now actually a reference to this file is held within Drupal, which eventually will mean that I can access this via sort of common Drupal modules like views and expose it to search in Drupal. So that's the next thing. This is sort of, at the moment, proof of concept, but it's working. And what we'll be hopefully be doing is making this so that it works with as a HTML5 viewer. I think increasingly sort of using Alfresco's renditions is going to be really important. As I said right at the start, Alfresco is sort of the content powerhouse behind this. So we can create different versions of a document that are suitable for the delivery channel that they're going in on. So for instance, we can create like a mobile optimized one if we need to. And Drupal would be able to detect which version of that document that you need and serve the appropriate one up to you. So I think this is going to become more and more important to have Alfresco in the background preparing all of that content. It's got all, out of the box, Alfresco does a fantastic job of managing those, and you can set renditions up using rules. So the next thing for this is really to make it a HTML5 version of this. So we'll save those, the different slides out and put them together as sort of one document with a previewer on it. Alfresco itself isn't quite there yet with that, so I'm hoping that's going to come sort of on stream into the community products, and we can sort of take that and run with it rather than sort of building a separate Alfresco thing. As I said before, we're not doing anything on the Alfresco backend with this integration. Even this, it's still just standard Alfresco. We're just using the standard rendition that Alfresco Share uses. So yeah. It's the WYSIWYG and media integration, using extra modules and building on top of Drupal's sort of common infrastructure. I believe sort of WYSIWYG is part of core Drupal 8, or at least the CK editor is. So using something like media on top of it is going to become more and more common as Drupal 8 comes out. And Drupal managed files, I think having that reference in Drupal and being able to expose them to the common Drupal modules is going to be a really big thing for sort of integrating these things. It needs to be more, it's going to be more of a seamless approach to doing that integration. So I can just manage those files as if they're Drupal, as if they're uploaded to the Drupal system. But I've got the power of Alfresco on the back end to do that versioning, that life cycle, and to do workflow on it. That's just a basic sort of what's happening in Alfresco. Alfresco's got the PowerPoint version. Always has the PowerPoint version. In Drupal, I'm going to save the Flash preview and the HTML5 preview locally in Drupal because they're just copies and renditions. They're not the original document. If I want the PowerPoint presentation, I'm always going to make a call from Drupal via CMIS back to my Alfresco repository. It's always going to do a live lookup to get that. I'm not going to sort of copy that over. So just to sort of wrap up, the message here really is that anyone can go away and sort of be the curator of their own library. We can build our own sort of content powerhouse. If we're not happy with someone else's, we can do whatever we want. We can be the integrators, the architects. We can do all that place setting and the presentation management in Drupal, and we can have all the complex business functionality on the back end. I think Dries really nailed it in his keynote speech this morning when he talked about best of breed integrations of solutions rather than using like a like a traditional proprietary vendor that had like a jack of all trades offering. And I really think that there's some of the parts that you get from Alfresco and Drupal working together is really gives you a really powerful content delivery mechanism. So that's about it really to wrap up. I think I've got a few minutes for questions. And just got some details here where you can download things. There's a getting started guide that goes into a little bit more detail than my demo did. I think it's maybe twice as long on, so it's got a YouTube video there, and it's got the links to the Drupal projects. But if anyone's got any questions or sort of ideas of how to move this forward, like get involved on Drupal.org. It's always good to have the conversation. So has anyone got any questions?
I missed the keynote this morning, so excuse me if the question was already covered. Where do you see the crossover point from just doing an Alfresco site public share with your documents or your content versus going ahead and tying that into Drupal?
So when you say public, do you mean sort of like inviting people into the cloud?
Right. So if you do like a public site in Alfresco with no moderation or anything, versus doing it in Drupal.
Yeah, I mean, I think the reason behind sort of us doing things using Drupal for that presentation management is it allows us to sort of curate the content a little bit more. And if you go to an Alfresco public site and it's completely unmoderated and you've got a load of you need to know the file structure and the file plan to an extent. And we had a problem with our partner site where we had an awful lot of nested folder structure, and most of that is actually a sort of editorial problem that people like creating folders, and they understand that that folder is a subfolder of that folder. But to an end user who doesn't know the organization, they go into a sort of like a folder hierarchy and they've got to click down. Most people just fall back and use search. But it's difficult to sort of present those documents in a sort of curated fashion with nice presentation and context to them if you've just got only a file structure plan. And so what what Drupal allows you to do is really sort of put that, build that context around it and build that presentation around it. Any more questions? Two here.
When you have with the CMIS views, how much are you able to make use of or have control over the metadata for that document? Either like not show certain metadata or show it, and then how can you use it?
Well, by default, just pulls through it's pulling through the description, the title. If the title and description aren't there, it'll pull through the name, which is like normally the file name. It also pulls through the file size and turns that into a friendly, readable version, and also the date. It's not something that's configurable at the moment, but certainly it'd be quite, in fact, it's themable. So what you could do is build a new theme on top of that. So you just build like a Drupal theme, and there's one built into it. So if you just literally took that theme that's there at the moment and just debugged it to see the CMIS object, you'll see all those extra metadata fields, and you can just pull them out of the CMIS object and build your own theme on top. So it'd be pretty easy. Thank you.
Hi, this is a question really just about basic Alfresco functionality. You talk about renditions.
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering, I'm new to all this, so I don't know if this is a basic feature or if it exists at all. If you have textual documents, say Microsoft Office or Macintosh, iLife or iWork documents, is it possible? Do you have a transformation, a rendering engine that can turn those into PDFs?
Yeah, actually, it's a good question. Sorry, I probably didn't explain renditions as well as I could have done previously. Renditions are automatically fired in Alfresco when you upload a document. So if I upload a PowerPoint in this instance, an automatic process happens in Alfresco on the server side. And that process is, first of all, it takes that PowerPoint and it creates a PDF.
Okay.
And then the PDF is immediately turned into a Flash file, which is what we were seeing displayed, which is what you see in Alfresco Share. Okay. And that's then stored as a relation to the original document called a rendition. Mm-hmm. So I think by default, Alfresco out of the box does two different rendition types, and one's the thumbnail that you see, the little tiny postage stamp sort of thumbnail of the start of the presentation, and the other one's the Flash one. The PDF one actually gets, I don't believe it's saved anywhere. It's certainly not saved as a related piece of data. It is created, but I think it's only created temporarily. There is a Alfresco share project, share media viewers, that Will Abson, an Alfresco guy, has sort of done a lot of work on, and that has an extension that allows you to save that PDF, and then they can make use of that. So in the future, we could use that as part of the viewer here, but really the basis of the demo is that this is all sort of out-of-the-box stock functionality, so I'm hoping that there'll be a HTML5 version of that. But yeah, and you can configure that using rules, so you can build a new rule to create a new transformation or do whatever you like.
Okay.
And that's not just for PowerPoints, but Word files, Excel files.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, well, just thank you ever so much, everyone, for coming. Just a couple of things before I leave. We've got some maps for the pub crawl this evening, so just a little bit of housekeeping. I think there's 4 pubs along the route, and they're all sponsored by different sponsors at Alfresco, and so each different pub's got a different sponsor. So I think they're at the back of the room if people want to pick them up on the way out. It'd be great to see people there, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your conference, and thank you ever so much.